Hello viewers, today I'm just going to read chapter 4 of Psychology, class 11th, sensory attention and the perceptual process. So the introduction is given. While some of our receptors are clearly observable, for example eyes or ears, other lie inside our body and are not observable without the help of electrical or mechanical devices. This chapter will be introduce you to various receptors that collect a various of information from the external and internal world. You will have also some important thing about attention which help us to notice and register the information that our senses or organs carry to us. Different types of attention will be described along with the factors that influence from both um, different types of attention will be described along with the factors that influence them. At the end we will discuss the process of perception that allow us to understand the world in a meaningful way. You will also have an opportunity to know how we are sometimes deceived by certain types of stimulus such as figures and pictures. Knowing the world. This is the heading of this topic, and now go on our reading. Further reading. Today, in the world which we live, is full of a variety of objects, people, and event. To look at the room you are sitting in, you will find so many things around you. Just to mention a few, you see your table and your chair, you look your book and your bag and your watch, pictures on the wall, and many other things. Their sizes, shapes, and color are also different. If you were more moved to other room of your house, you will notice several other things, e.g. pots and pens, almirah, TV. If you go beyond your house, you will find still many things that you are generally know about: trees, animals, buildings, such experience are very important. Such experience are very common in our daily day-to-day life. We hardly have to make any effort to know them. If someone asks you, how can you say that these various things exist in your room or house or in the outside environment, you will almost probably answer that you see or experience them all around you. In doing so, you are trying to tell the person that the knowledge about various objects become possible with the help of our senses organ, e.g. eyes and ears. These organs collect information not only from the external world but also from our own body. The information collected by our senses organ form the basis of all our knowledge. The senses organ register several kind of information about the various object. However, in order to be registered, the objects and their qualities, example size, shape, color, must be able to draw our attention. The register information must also be sent to the brain that construct some meaning of them. Thus, our knowledge of the world around us depend on the three basic process called sensation, attention, perception. These processes are highly interrelated. Hence, these are often considered as different elements of the same process called cognition. Nature and varieties of stimulation. The external environment that surrounds us contain a wide variety of stimulus. Some of them can seen, e.g. how example a house, while some can be heard only. Example music. There are several others that we can smell, easy fragrance, flower, or taste, easy sweets that are still part that we can experience or by touching. Example, softness of cloth. All these stimulus provide us a various kind of information. We have very specialized senses organs to deal with these very different stimulus. As a human being, we are bestowed with a set of seven senses organs. These senses organs are known as sensory receptors or information gather system because they gather information from the various sources. Five of these senses organs collect information from the external world. These are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. While other eyes are primarily responsible for vision, ears are hearing, and nose for smell, and tongue or for taste. Skin is for responsible for experience of touch, warmth, cold, and pain. Specialized receptors of warmth, cold, and pain found inside our skins. Beside these five external senses, we have got two deep senses. These are called kinesthetic and vestibular system. These provide us important information about the body position and movement of the body parts related to each other. With these seventh sense organs, we registered 10 different varieties of stimulus. For example, you may notice whenever a light is bright or dim, whether it is yellow or red, green, and so on. With sound, you may notice whether it is loud or faint, whether it is a molecular or a distracting, and so on. These different qualities of stimulus are also registered by our senses. Sense sense modalities. Our sense organs provide us with the first-hand information about the external or internal world. The initial experience of stimulus or the object registered by the particular sense organ are called sensation. This is the process through which we detect and encode a variety of physical stimulus. Sensation, also referred to immediate basic experience of the stimulus, attributes such as a hard, warm, loud, and blue, which are result from the appropriate stimulation of sensory organ. Different sense organs deal with a different form of stimulus and serve different purposes. Each sense organ is highly specialized for dealing with a particular kind of information. Hence, each one of them is known as a modality. Functional limitation of sense organs. Before we move on the discussion of sense organs, it is important to note that our senses organ function with certain limitation. For example, our eyes cannot be see things which are dim or very bright. Similarly, our eyes cannot hear very faint or loud sound. The same is true for other senses organ. As human beings, we function within a limit range of stimulation for being noticed by the sensory receptors. A stimulus has to be an optimal intensity of magnitude. The relationship between a stimulus and the sensation they evoke has been studied in a discipline called psychophysics. In order to be noticed, a stimulus has to be carry minimum values of weight. The minimum value of the stimulus required to activation a given sensory system is called absolute threshold of or absolute lemon AL. For example, if you add a granule of sugar to glass of water, you may not experience any sweetness in a water. Addition of a second granule to water may also not make taste sweet. But if you go adding sugar one after another, there will you come a point when you will say that the water is now sweet. The minimum number of the sugar granules required to say that water is sweet, there will be AL of the sweetness. It may be noted at a point that the AL is fixed point. Instead, it varies considerably across individual and situations depending on the pupil's organic conditions and their motivation state. States hence be access to it on the basis of number of trials. The number of sugar granules that may produce that may produce that may produce that may produce the experience of sweetness in water on 50% of occasions. 50% of occasions will be called the ale of sweetness. If you add more sugar, a number of sugars granules, the change are the greater that the water will be reported more often as sweet than the plain. As it is not possible for us to notice all the stimulus. It is also not possible to differentiate between all stimulus. In order to notice two stimulus as are different from each other, these are some minimum differences between the value of this stimulus. The smallest difference in the value of two stimulus, it is that is necessary to notice them as different is called the difference threshold or difference lemon DL. To understand we may continue with our sugar water experiment. As we have seen, the plain water is experienced as a sweet after the addition of the certain number of the sugar granules. Let us remember this sweetness. The next question is how many sugar granules will needed in answer to experience its sweetness as different from the previous sweetness. So go on the additional sugar granules one after another, lasting the water each time after addition of a few granules. You will notice a point that the water is now sweeter than the previous one. The number of sugar granules added to the water generate an experience of sweetness that is different from the previous sweetness. On the 50% of the occasions will be called the DL of the sweetness. Thus, the difference threshold is minimum amount of change in the physical stimulus that is capable of producing sensation. Difference on 50% of the trial. You may realize by now understanding of sensation is not possible without understanding the AL and DL different types of stimulus, for example visual or auditory. But that is not enough. Sensory process do not depend only on the stimulus characteristic sense organ and the neural pathways connecting them to various brain certain also play a vital role in a process. A sensation organ receive a stimulus and encodes it is an electrical impulses for being noticed. This electrical impulse must have reached an higher brain centers. Any structural and functional defected or damage in the receptors organs it in neural pathways or the concerned brain areas the lead to partially to complete loss of sensation. Attention process. In the previous sections we have discussed some sensory modalities that help us to collecting information from the external world and also from our internal system. A large number of stimulus imping upon our senses organs stimulously, but we do not notice all of them at the same time, but a selected few of them are noticed. For example, when you enter your classroom, you encounter several things in it, such as a door, wall, window, painting on wall, table, chair, sudden school bags, water bottles, and so on. But you selectively focus on one or two of them at a one time. The process through which certain stimulus are selected from the group of other is generally referred to as attention. At a point, it may be noted that besides selection, attention it also refers from several other properties like alertness, concentration, and such. Alertness refer to an individual's readiness to deal with stimulus that appears before him while participating in a race. In your school, you might have seen the participation on the starting line in an alert state, waiting for a whistle to blow in order to run. Concentration refer to focusing of awareness on certain specific object while excluding other for a moment. For example, in the classroom, a student concentrated on the teacher's lectures and ignoring all sort of noises coming from the different corners of the school. In the search of the observer, look for a specified subset of object, a set or set of object. For example, when you go to fetch your younger sister and brother from school, you just looking for them among innumerable boys and girls. All these activities require some kind of effort on the part of of the pupil. Attention in the sense refer to effort allocation. Attention has a focus as well as fringe. When a field of awareness is concentrated on a particular object or event, it is called focus. The focus point of attention, on the contrary, when an object or event are away from the center or awareness, and one is a few vaguely aware of them, they are said to be at the fringe of attention. Uh, Attention has been classified in numbers of way. A process of oriented view divide into two types, namely selective and sustainable. We have briefly discussed the main feature of these types of attention. Sometimes we can also attend to different things that are same time. When this happens, it is called the divided attention. Box 4.1 describe when and how the division of attention is possible. First, selective attention. Selective attention is concerned mainly with the selection of limited number of stimulus or the object from the large number of stimulus. We have already indicated that our perceptual system has been limited capacity to receive and process information. This means that it deals only with a few stimulus at a given moment of time. This question is which of these stimulus will be get selected and proceeded. Psychologists have identified a number of factors that determine the selection of a stimulus. Factor affecting selective attention. Several factors influence selective attention. These generally related to the characteristic of the stimulus and the characteristic of individual. They are generally classified as external and internal factors. External are related to the features of stimulus. Other things held constant. The size, intensity, and the motion of stimulus appear to be important determinant of attention is large. Bright and moving stimulus easily catchy our attention. Stimulus which are novel and moderate, complex, but also easy to get our focus. Studies indicate the intentional photograph and more likely to attend to than the photograph and of inanimate object. Similarly, rhythmic auditory stimulus are more readily attention to than the verbal narration. Sudden and intense stimulus have a wonderful capacity to draw attention. Internal factors lie in the individual. These are divided into two mainly categories. Why via with a motivational factor, second cognition factor. Motivation factor related to our biological and social needs. When we are hungry, we notice even a faint smell of the food. A student taking an examination is likely to focus on a teacher's instruction more than other student. Cognitive factor include include factors like interest, attitude, and prepare preparatory set object or event which appears interest or readily attention by the individual. Similarly, we pay quick attention to certain object or event to which we are favorably disposed. Preparatory set generate a mental state or to act in a certain way, and readiness of an individual to responsible for one kind of stimulus and not to other. Theories of selective attention. A number of theories that have been developed to explain the process of selection attention. We will briefly discuss three of these theories. Filter theory was developed by Broadbent in 1956. According to this theory, mainly stimulus stimulus enter our receptors, creating a kind of bottleneck situation moving through a short-term memory system. They enter the selective filter, which allow one stimulus to pass through for a lighter level of process. Other stimulus are screened out of that moment of the time. Thus, we become aware of only stimulus which can get access through the second. Sorry, I just start the page number 64 again. As stimulationary enter our receptors, creating kind of a bottleneck situation moving through a short-term memory system. They enter the selective filter, which allow only one stimulus to pass through for a higher level of process. Other stimulus are screened out at a moment of time. Thus, we become aware of only that stimulus which get access that through the selective filter alteration theory, which are developed by Treisman in 1962 by modifying Broadband's theories, this theory as process that a stimulus not getting access to selective filter at a given moment of time are not completely blocked. The filter only attenuates weaken their strengthening. Thus, some stimulus manage to escape through the selective filter to research higher level of process. It indicates that the personally relevant stimulus, e.g., one's name is collectively dinner, can notice even a very low level of sounded such stimulus, even though fairly weak, may also generated a response occasionally by slipping through the selective filter. Multimode theories are which developed by Johnson and Hinge in 1978. The theory is believed that attention is flexible system that allow a selective of a stimulus over the other at the three stages. At the stage once the sensory representation, e.g., visual images or stimulus, are constructed at the stage of two. Semantic representation, e.g., names on object, are constructed, and stage 3, the sensation and semantic representation, enter the conscious net. It is also suggested that more processes require more mental efforts when the messages are selected on the basis of the stage of one processing. Early selections, less mental efforts is required than when the selection based on the stage 3 process. Late selection, sustained attention, while selecting attention is mainly concerned with the selection of stimulus. Sustained attention is concerned with the concentration. It refers to the ability of to maintain attention on an object or event for a longer duration. It is known as vigilance. Sometimes people have to concentrate on a particular task for many hours. Air traffic controller and radar reading provide us with a good example of this phenomenon. They have constantly watch and monitor signal on a screen. The occurrence of the signal in such a situation is usually unpredictable, and error in detecting signal may be fatal. Hence, a great deal of vigilance is required for this situation. Factor influence sustained attention. Several can facilitate in an inhabited and an individual performs on task of sustained attention. Sensory motility is one of them. Performing is found to be superior when the stimulus called signals are auditory. When they are visual, clearly of stimulus is another factor. Intense and the long-lasting stimulus facilitate sustained attention and result in better performance. Temporal uncertainty in the third factor, when stimulus appear at regular interval of the time, they are attained better than when they appear in the irregular interval. Spectral uncertainty and is the fourth factor. Stimulus is that appeared at the fact pairs and readily attended, whereas those that appear at the random location are different to attend. Attention has several practical implications. The number of the object one can readily attention to in a single glance. It is used to design the number of plates of motorbike and cars so that the traffic police can easily notice them. In a case of traffic rule violation, number of children fall to perform in a school simply due to the problem. Attention box 4.3 represent some interesting information about the disorder of attention perceptual process. In the previous section, we have examined that the stimulus of the sensory organ that lead us to experience sometimes, such as a flash of light or sound or a smell. This elementary experiences called sensation does not provide us with any understanding of a stimulus that is stimulated to the senses organ. For example, it does not inform us about the sources of light, sound, or fragrance, in order to make senses out of the raw material provided by the sensory system. Be proceeded further in doing. Yeah, attention. Now we just read about the box number 4.3, attention defected hyperactive disorder. This is kind of such a behavioral aspect, a mental disease. Now just we just keep reading of this behavioral problem of Mental illness. This is a very common behavioral disorder found in among children of the primary school. Primary school, it is characterized by impulsivity, excessive undermotor activities, and inability to attend. This disorder is more prevalent among the boys than the girls. If not managed properly, the attention difficulty may persistent in adolescence or adult years. Difficulty in sustaining attention in a central feature of this disorder, which get reflected in several other domains of the child. For example, such children are highly distractible. They do not follow instruction. They have difficulty in getting along the parents and negatively viewed by their peers. They do not do poorly in school and show difficulties in reading and learning basic subject in schools. In spite of the fact that these are not depicted in these intelligence, society generally do not provide evidence for the biological basis of disorder, whereas some relationship of disorder which dietary factor, particularly food coloring, has been documented. On the other hand, social psychological factor, example home environment, family pathology also have been found. The account of ADHD more reliable than other factors. Currently, ADHD is considered multiple cause and effect. As a disagreement of retain over the most effective method to treatment of the ADHD. A drug called ritalin is widely used, which decreases children's overactivity and distractibility, and at the same time increase their attention and ability to concentrate. However, it does not cure the problem and often also result in such negative side effect as a suppression in normal growth of the height and weight. On the other hand, behavioral management programs featuring positive reinforcement and structuring learning material and tasks in such a way that minimize occurs and maximize immediate feedback and success. They have been found a quite useful. Successful modification of ADHD is claimed with a cognitive behavioral training program in which rewards for design behavior are combined with a training in the use of verbal self instruction. Stop, think, and then do. With this procedure, the ADHD children learn to shift their attention to less frequently and to behave reflectively, a learning that is respectably and relatively stable over a time. So we give meaning to stimulus by using our learning, memory, motivation, emotion, and other psychological processes. The process by which we recognize, interpret, or give a meaning to the information provided by the sense organ is called the perception. In interpreting stimulus or event, individual often construct them in their ways. Their thus perception is not merely an interpreting of object or event of the external or internal world as they exist. Instead, it is also construction of those object and event from one's own point of view. The process of meaning making involve a certain sub process. These are shown in figure 4.1. Processing approaches in perception. These how do we identify an object? Do we identify a dog because we have first recognized in its fury coat? It has four legs, its eyes, ears, and so on, or do we have recognized these different parts because we have first identify a dog? First we identify a dog. The idea that we recognize the process began from the part of which was serves as the basic for recognition of the whole is known as bottom-up processes. The notion that recognition process begin from the whole which lead to identification of its various component is known as top-down processing. The bottom-up approaches lay emphasis on the features of the stimulus in perception and considers a perception as a process of mental construction. Approaches lay emphasis on the perceiver and the considers perception as a process of the recognition or identification of a stimulus study. So that an a process, both the process interaction with each other to provide us with an understanding of the world. The perceiver, human beings are not just a mechanical and a passive receptors of stimulus from the external world. They are created, begin, and try to understand external world in their own way. In this process, their their motivation and expectations are culturally knowledge and the past experiences and their memory as well as values, beliefs, attitudes. Play an important role in giving meaning to the external world. Some of these factors are described here. Motivation, the need of the desire of the perceiver strongly influence her our perception. People want to fulfill their need and desires. They through various means. One way to do this is perceive object in a picture as something that we will satisfy their needs. Experiment were conducted to examine influence of hunger or perception. When a hungry person was going ambiguously pictures, they were found to be perceive them as a picture of a food object more than a stated non-hungry person. Expectation or perceptual set the experience and the expectation about what we might perceive in a given stimulus also influence our perception. This phenomena or perceptual familiarization or perception generalization reflect a strong tendency to see what we expect to see even when our result does not accurately reflect external activity. For example, if you were milkman deliver you milk at 5:13 a.m. Not any knocking at the door according time is likely to perceived as a presence of the milkman, even if it is someone else. Activity 4.2 to demonstrate expectancy. Tell your friend to close your eyes right at 12, 13, 14, 15 on board. Ask her open eyes her eyes 5 second look at the board. Any note you will find say repeated replacing only 12, 13, 14, 15. A B C D via A is 13, C D is ask her again, note down. C is answer. Most people write down B in a place of 13. Cognition styles. Cognition style refer to a constant way of dealing with our environment. It significantly affect the way we perceive the environment. These are there are several cognition styles that people use in perceiving their environment. One most extensively used in studies in the field dependent in the field independent cognitive style. Field dependent people perceive the external world in it totally, i.e., the global or the holistic manner. On the other hand, field independent people perceive the external world by breaking its smaller units, i.e., in the analyzing or different manner. Look at figure 4.2 and can you find out the hidden triangle picture how hidden triangle in pictures. How many things do you take locate try to find out time other student of your class take a locate the triangle. Those who can do it quickly will be called field dependent. Those who take a long time called field dependent. Cultural background and experience. Different experiences and learning opportunities available to people in different cultural settings also influence their perception. People containing from a picture lacks environment fail to recognize object in picture. Hodgson situated at the perception of the pupil of a precon subject and noted several difficulties. Many of them were unable to identify the object depicted in picture. Example, an antelope spear. They are failed to perceive distance in a picture and interpret picture incorrectly. Eskimos have been found to make a fine distinctive among a variety of snow that it we may unable to notice. Some of aboriginal group of the Siberian region have been found to differentiate among dozens of skin color of reindeer, which we found not be able to do. These studies indicate that the perceiver play a key role in the process of perception. People process and interpret stimulus in their own way or way depending on the personal, social, and cultural condition. Due to the other factors, our perception are not finally turned but also modified. Principle of perceptual organization. Our visual field is collectively of different elements such as a point, line, color. However, we perceive these elements as a organized wholes or a complete object. For example, we see a bicycle as a complete object, not BCY cycle as a complete object, not as a complete collection of different parts, exits, saddle, wheel, handles. The process of organizing visual field a meaningful whole is known as form perception. You may wonder how different parts of an object are organized into a meaningful whole. You may also ask if you were certain factors that are facilitate to in or inhabited this process of organization. Several scholars have tried to answer such questions, but the most widely accepted answer has been given by a group of researchers called the Gestalt psychologists. Prominently among them are Kucher, Kafka, and Weimar. Gestalt mean a regular figure or a form. According to Gestalt psychologist, we perceive different stimulus, not a discrete element, but an organized whole that carries a definite form. They believed that the form of an object lie in its whole, which is different from the sum of their parts. For example, a flower pot with a bunch of flower is a whole. It is a flower pot with a bunch of flowers is whole. The flower is removed, the flower pot is still remain as a whole. It is a configuration of flowers pot that has changed. Flower pot with a flower is one configuration. Without the flower, it is another configuration. The Gestalt psychology also indicate that our cerebral process are also organized or oriented toward the perception of good figure or paragonage. That is a reason why we perceive everything in an organized form. The most primitive organization that plays in the form figure ground segregation, which when we look at a surface, certain aspect of the surface clearly stand out and separate stimulus and title, whereas other do not. For example, we can see words on a page or a painting on a wall or a bird flying in the sky. The word is painting and the two word standing out of the background and the perceived as a figure, while a page wall in and sky beyond the figure and perceived as a background. The test is experience. Look up the figure 4.1. The given below, you will see the either wide part of figure which look a vase, flower pot, or the other figure which other part of the figure which look like two faces. Here we see the diagram. So we distinguish figure from the ground on the basis of following characteristic. First, figure has a definite form while the background is relatively formless. Second, figure is more organized as compared to the background. The figures has clearly contour outline while the background is counterless. Fourth, figure stand out from the background while the background stay behind the figure. Fifth, figure appears more clear, limited as relatively nearer, while the background appears relatively unclear, unlimited, and away from us. This discussion presented about the indication that human beings perceive the world in a whole rather than a discrete part. The Gestalt psychologist has been you given us several laws to explain how and why different stimulation in our visual field are organized into meaningful whole object. Let us look at some of these principles. First, the principle of proximity. Objects that are close together in a space on a time are perceived as a belonging together or as a group. For example, it does not look like a square pattern of dots, but as a series of the column of dots. Similarly, 4.4 also so look at the group of the dots in a row. Principle of similarities. Objects that are similar to one another is have the similar characteristic. are perceived as a group. In figure 4.5, the little circle and square are in space both horizontally and vertically, so on the proximity does not come into play. Instead, we tend to see alternative columns of circle and square. Second, the principle of continuity. The principle states that we tend to perceive objects as belonging together if we appear to be form a continuous pattern. For instance, we are the most likely to identify two lines A, B, C, D across, then identify these lines meeting at a corner P. Principle of smallness. According to the principle, a smaller area tend to be seen as figure against the larger background. In figure 4.7, we are more likely to see a black cross rather than a white cross within the circle because of the principle of similarity. The principle suggested that the similarity area that symmetrical areas tend to be seen and figure against the asymmetrical background. For example, figure 4.8, the black areas are seen figure and as they have symmetry properties against their white asymmetry background. The principle of surroundedness. This principle, the area surrounded by the other tend to be perceived as a figure. For example, the image in figure 4.9 look like five figures against the white background rather than left. The principle of closure. We tend to fill the gap in the stimulus and perceive the object as a whole rather than either separate part. For example, in figure 4.10, the small angles are seen as a triangle due to our tendency to fill gaps in object provided to our sensory organs. The perception of space, depth, and distance. The visual field or space in which things exist, move, can be placed is called the space. The space in which we live in organized in the three dimension. We perceive not only spatial attributes, easy size, shape, directions of variation object, but also the distance of between the object found in space. While the image of object project on your retina are flat and two-dimensional, left, right, up, down, we still perceive three dimension in a space. Why does it happen? So it occurs due to our ability to transfer to two-dimensional retina vision into three-dimensional perception. The process of viewing the world in the three dimension is called distance or depth perception. Depth perception is important in our daily life. For example, when we drive, we use depth to access the distance of an approaching automobile, or while we decide to call a person walking down a street, we determine the loudness with which to call. The perceived depth we depend on two mainly sources of information called cues. One of the called the binoculars clues because they require both eyes. Another is called monocular clues because they allow us to perceive depth with just one eye. A number of such clues are used to change a two-dimensional image into three-dimensional perception. Monocular clues, psychological clues. Monocular clues in depth perception are effect in object viewed with on only one eye. The clues often are artists to introduce depth in the two-dimensional painting. Hence, they are also known as a pictorial clue. Important monocular clues that help us to judging the distance and depth in the dimensional surfaces are described. We will find the applied in figure 4.11. The above picture will help you to understand the some monocular clues in interposition and relative size and see the trees which are clues we can locate in a picture. Relative size of the size of the retina image allow us to judge distance based on our past and present experiences with similar object. As the object get away retina image becomes smaller and smaller. We tend to perceive an object further from away. It appears small and close when it appears bigger. Interposition or overlapping, these clues occurs when some position it of object is covered by another object. The overlapping object is considered further away, whereas the object that cover appears nearer. Linear perception, this reflection of a phenomenon by which distant object appear to the closer together than the nearer object. For example, parallel lines such as a rail track appear to converge with an increased distance with a vanishing point at a horizon more than a line coverage. The further away they appear, aerial perspective, the air contain microscopic particle of dust or moisture that makes distant object look hazy or blurry. This effect is called the aerial perception. For example, distinct mountains appear blue due to the scattering of blue light or at the atmosphere, whereas the same mountains are perceived to be closer when an atmosphere is clear. Light and shades in the light, some part of the object get highlighted, whereas some part become darker. Highlighted and shadow provide us the information about the object distance relatively high. The large object are perceived as being closer to be viewed as a smaller object as being further away. When we expect two objects to be the same size and they are not, the larger of the two will appear closer and the smaller will appear further away. The textual granite, it is represent the phenomena by the visual field more density to element and seen further from away. Figure 4 point in the figure 4.12, the density of the stone increasing as we look further away. The motion parallax, it is a kinetic monocular clues and hence not considered as a pictorial clue. It occurs when object at different distance move at a different relative speed. The distance object appear to be move slower than the object that are close. The rate of an object movement provide a clue to its distance. For example, when we travel in a bus, closer object move against the direction of the bus, whereas the further object move with the direction of the bus. Monocular clues, psychological clues, some important clues to depict perception in the three-dimensional space are provided by the both the eyes. Three of them have particularly been found to be interesting: retinal or binocular disparity. Retinal disparity occurs because the two eyes have different location in our head. They are separated from each other horizontally by distance of 6.5. Because of this distance, the image formed as on the retina of each eye of the same object is slightly different. The different between the object image is called the retinal disparities. The brain interpret a large retinal disparity to mean a close object and a small retinal disparity to mean a distant object. As the disparity is less for a distant object and more for the near object. Convergence, when we see a nearby object, our eyes converge inward in order to bring the image or a phobia of each eye. A group of muscles send message to the brain regarding the degree to which eyes are turning inward, and these messages are interpreted as a clue of the perception of the depth, the degree of the convergence degree. As an object moves further away from the observer, you can experience convergence by holding in a figure in front of your nose and slowly bringing it closer. The more your eyes turn inward or converge, the nearer the object appear in space. Accommodation, the accommodation refer to the process by which the focus of the image on the retina with the help of ciliary muscles. These muscles change the thickness of the lens of the eyes. It is object get away from the more than 2 meters. The muscles relaxed as the object move near the muscles. The contract and thickness of the lens increase. The signal about the degree of the contraction of the muscle is sent to the brain that which provide the clue distance. Activity 4.3, hold a pencil in front of you and close your eyes in and focus the pencil and open the right eyes and close it. eyes keep doing simultaneously. Both the eyes, the pencil will appear move sideways or side in front of their faces. Perceptual constancy. The sensory information that received from the environment constantly changes as we moves around, yet we form a stable perception of an object seen from any position and in any instant of the light. Perception of the object as the relatively stable in spite of the change in stimulation of the sensory receptor is called perceptual constancy. Here we will examine three types of perceptual constancy that we commonly experience in our visual domain. Size constancy. The size of an image on our retina changes with the change in the distance of object from the eye. The further away it is, the smaller is the image. On the other hand, our experiences show that within a limit the object appear to be about the same size irrespective of distance. For example, when you approach your friend for a distance from the perception of your friend's size does not change much, despite the fact that the image or retina become larger. This tendency for the perceived size of the object to be remain relatively unchanged with the change in the distance from the observer and size of the retinal image is called the size constancy. Safe constancy. Sorry, my pronunciation is not good in that particular words. So I just read the safe constancy. Um, in our perception, that shape of familiar object remain unchanged despite the change in the pattern of remain images resulting from the different in the orientation. For example, a dinner plate look at the same shape whether the image is cast on the retina in a circle is or the ellipsis or the roughly a short time if the plate is viewed from the edge. It is also called form constancy with a brightening constancy. Visual object not appear constant in their shape and size. They are appear constant in their degree of whiteness, grayness or blackness, even though the amount of physical energy reflected from them charges considerably. In other words, our experiences of brightness does not change in spite of the changes in the amount of reflection and that are reaching our eyes. The tendency to maintain apparent brightness constant under different amount of illumination is called a brightness. The brightness constancy. For example, surface of a paper which appear white in the sunlight is still perceived as a white in the room light. Similarly, coal that look a black and in the sun looking after black in a room. Illusions. Our perception are not always vertical. So sometimes we fall interpret the sensory information correctly. This result in a mismatch between the physical stimulus and its perception. These misperceptual resulting from the misinterpretation of information received by the sensory organ are generally known as illusion. These are experienced more or less all of us. These result of an external stimulus situation are generated at the same time of experience of each individual. That is why illusions is also called primary organizations. All through the illusions can be experienced by the stimulation of any senses. Psychological they studied more have commonly it in a visual than other senses modality. Some perceptual illusions are universally found in all individuals. For example, the rail track appear to be converging of all us. These illusions are called universal illusion or permanent illusion, as they do not change with the experience, practice. Some other illusions can be seen an individual or individual. They are called the personal illusion. In the section we will describe some important visual illusion. Geometrical in the figure 4.13 the milieu illusion have been shown. All of us perceive line as a shorter than line B. All thought the lines are equal. This illusion experienced even by the children. There Are some studies that suggested that even animals experience an illusion more or less as beside molar layer illusion. Molar layer illusions, several other visual illusions are explained by the human being. Also, birds and animals. Figure 1.4, you can see the illusion of vertical and horizontal line. Although both the lines are equal, we perceive the vertical lines are longer than the horizontal line. Apparent movement illusion. This illusion is experienced when some motionless pictures are projected one after another at a perceived appropriate rate. This illusion is referred to as fear phenomena. When we see moving pictures in a cinema, so we are influenced by the kind of illusion. The succession of flickering electrical light also generated all this illusion. The phenomena can be experimentally studied with the help of an instrument by presenting two or more lights in a session in succession for experience of the illusion. Whether Meyer had reported the presence of appropriate level of brightness, size, spectacle gap, and temporal contiguity of different light to be important. In the absence of these light point will not appear as moving. They will appear either as one point or as a different point, either one point or as a different point appearing one another one after another without any experiences of motion. Experiences of illusion indicate that people do not always perceive the world as it. Instead, they are engaging in the construction, sometimes based on the features of stimulation and sometimes based on the experiences in a given environment. This point will be the further made clear in the section that follow. Now, socio-cultural influence on perception. Several psychologists have been studied the process of perception in different socio-cultural settings. The question where they tried to answer through these studies are: does a perceptual organization of people living in different cultural settings they place in a uniform manner? Are the perceptual processes universal, or they are vary across different cultural settings? Because we know people living in different part of the world, we look different. Many psychologists hold the view that the way perceiving the world must be different in some respect. Let us examine some studies of the perception of illusion figure and the other pictorial material. Where you are already familiar with the Muller's layers and vertical horizontal illusion figure. Psychologists have used to these figures with the several groups of people living in Europe, after Africa, and many other places. Siegel, Campbell, and his cohorts carried स्क्विल्ट सॉरी यहाँ पे थोड़ा सॉरी यहाँ पे कहाँ पे था मैं illusion figure and other pictorial already perceiving the world must be different in some respect. Let us examine some studies related to perception of illusion figure and other pictorial material. You have already familiar with the molar layer and vertical horizon figure. Psychologists have used to figure these several groups of people are living in Europe, Africa, and many other places. Siegel, Campbell, and Huskevelt carried out the most extensive studies of illusion susceptibility by the comparing sample from the remote African villages and western urban settings. It was found that African subjects showed after greater susceptibility of to horizontal vertical illusion, whereas the Western subjects showed a greater susceptibility to Miller's illusion. Similar findings have been reported in the other studies. Also, living in dense forest, the African subject regularly experience particularly easy long tree and develop a tendency to overestimate in the Westernerys who lived in an environment characterized by the right angle develop a tendency to underestimate the length of the line characterized by the enclosure. Easy allow allow had this conclusion has been confirmed too in several studies. It suggested that habit of perception of learning different in different culture setting. In some studies, people have living in cultural settings have been given pictures for identification of object and interpretation of the depth of the event represented representation in them hoods and did not similarly studied in Africa and found that people who had never seen pictures had great difficulty in recognition object depicted in them in interpreting depth cues, e.g., superimposition. It was indicating that information in instructions in home and habitual exposure to pictures were necessary to sustain the skill of picture depth perception. Sinha and Misra have been carried out several studies on pictorial perception varies of the pictures with the pupil from the diverse cultural settings such as hunter and gatherer living in the forest, agriculturist living villager, and the people employed as a living in cities. These studies indicate the interpretation of the picture is strongly related to the cultural experiences of the people, who people in generally can recognize a familiar object in a picture or these exposed to the picture have difficult in the interpretation of the action of event depicted in them. The key term absolutely the threshold binary clues bottom of by person depth perception different threshold divided attention figure ground stagnation filter theory filter attrition theory gestalt monolocal cues organ perceptual consistency fee phenomenon selection attention sustained attention top down processing visual illusion summary. First we have to read the knowledge of our internal and external world become possible with the help of senses. Five of them are external senses and two internal senses. The senses organs receive various stimulus and send them in the form of the neural impulse to specific area of the brain for interpretation. Attention and is the process Attention is the process through which we select certain information by filtration out many other that appear to be irrelevant in at the given moment of the time. Activation, concentration, and search are important properties of attention. Selective and sustained attention are the two major types of attention. Divided attention is evidented in the case of the highly practiced of task in which there is much or automatically of information processing. The span of attention is a magical number of the 7 plus and minus 2. The perception referred to the process of the interpretation and the informed construction of the information received from the sensory organ. Human being are perceives these word in terms of their motivation, expectation, cognition, styles, and the cultural background. Forms perception refer to the perception of the visual field set off from the rest of the field by the visual cognition. The most primitive form of the organization take place in the form of the figure ground segregation. Gestalt psychology have been identified several principles that determine our perceptual our perceptual organization. The image of an object projected to an retina is the two-dimensional, three-dimensional. um, Perception is a psychological process that depends on the correct utilization of certain molecular and binocular clues. Perceptual consistency refer to an invariance of our perception of an object seen from any position and in any intensity of the light. These there is a good evidence of size and shape and brightness and consistency. Uh, Illusion are example of non vertical perception. They are referred to misperception resulting from the misinterpretation of information received by our sensory organs. Some illusions are universal while other are more personal and cultural specific. Such socio-cultural factors play an important role in our perception by generating differential familiarities with the silence of stimulus as well as certain habits of perceptual interference and among people. Here, we just finished our lecture, and thanks for watching.